So here's the one big episode of Bojack Horseman that I feel was missing. The one about Bojack's father, Butterscotch. Butterscotch Horseman plays a really fascinating role in the series as both a very intimidating, malicious figure and an extremely aloof presence as a whole. And while I do think this is indicative of Bojack's relationship with his father, where he was not very present at all in his life except for those moments of abuse, I also believe there was a lot more that could have been done with him, and that the writers were perhaps planning to do if they were given more time by Netflix. After all, while this story is tightly told and doesn't leave much for the audience to want, the writers did have more ideas before they were forced to end it at season 6. And I think where they had a ton of more room to explore is with Butterscotch himself. You see, Butterscotch is not a one-note character. Much of the fanbase can analyze him that way, and I've even seen a few say that extra backstory is not really required for him, as everything the show already gave us is the totality of his personality, of his essence, that this racist, sexist man is pretty much all you get. But as much as I do loathe this guy, please don't misunderstand me here, I really don't believe that to be true. As much as we do see him simply cheating, philandering, insulting, and abusing, that isn't all he is as a person. It certainly is the legacy he left behind, but there's always more to explore inside a person's head. Keep in mind that this whole series is largely from Bojack's point of view. Whatever context we do get about Butterscotch is given to us through Bojack's lens, through his personal perspective on his father's personality. I'm not saying that I believe any of Bojack's memories of his father to be untrue, I'm just saying that they hardly represent his entire life. Really just a very small part of it, especially considering that Butterscotch wasn't very present, as I said. The only time we really diverge from Bojack's POV is in Time's Arrow, where we do get a little bit more perspective about Butterscotch as a younger man. We get a bit more about how he grew into that aloof, abusive presence, but again, none of it shows even close to the full picture. It's Beatrice's eyes that we're seeing him through this time, and once again, her memories are skewed toward his awful treatment of her. Understandably. We know next to nothing about his home life, where he came from, or how his family treated him, and we know how crucial that can be to help the audience truly understand a problematic character, as it was for Bojack and Beatrice. It doesn't mean it'd lead us to forgive him in any way, but perhaps see more sides to him that we've already been given in the main series. All we do know is that his mother passed away when he was rather young. Yes, this is a part of his pickup strategy, but I never really thought he was directly lying. If this man was raised only by his father, who perhaps acted much like he ends up acting, it would make a lot of sense for how he developed into the father that Bojack knew. And to be fair to the show itself, because the writing is pretty much always impeccable, while we do get an abundant amount of behavior from him that suggests that he has no depth at all, there's always some moments that hint at the reality of the situation, that he is indeed an actual person with emotions, as much as he might play a specific emotionless role. Like in the rant he levels against Bojack in Free Churro. At first, he blames and berates Beatrice for her breaking down after seeing A Doll's House, since it resulted in him having to make his own lunch. Oh, the horror! But even after yelling a bit about it, he does calm down, realizing and stating that she's trying her best. He even calls her a good mother. It's not true, but it's wild to hear this man who was so awful to her say something this kind about her. Like I said, in Time's Arrow, we got a full picture of how terrible he was to Beatrice her entire life, but this shows, apart from what she knew about him, how he could act differently at times. How we can piece more of this man's true essence together, the more different angles we're able to view him from. If only he ever said kind things to her or praised her to her face. There is still some sort of loving emotion within him, though he never really shows it to her at all and does his best to avoid it. I think it's too far buried underneath resentment for her imploring him to take the job at her father's company, and for causing him to be stuck with her and Bojack, even though that's not remotely true, of course. It's also why he watches her dance with some level of intimacy and dedication at their dinner parties. Bojack stated that he never really missed that opportunity. He really wishes to see her grace and her beauty once again, the woman that he fell for so long ago. He did feel something for her, even if, yes, he did intend to never call her again after their first encounter, that fucking sleazy jerk. Bojack, though, as a show, always works to show the complexity of its more flawed characters. It always works to portray that they, despite their immense errors and mistakes and how much you might hate them, are still human. That there is an underlying emotional reason for all of this negative behavior and treatment toward others, just as there was with Bojack himself. And this is why I believe there would have been an episode for Butterscotch in the future. I really don't think they would have left anything regarding Bojack's upbringing and the people that surrounded him untouched. Another aspect to Butterscotch that I feel is really important to the series and Bojack's character even is how he was used to undress masculinity, to pull the curtains aside and really show what was behind all of it. This show already speaks a lot on toxic masculinity and its very dark and real effects. And I believe Butterscotch's past and showing his transformation into this awful person we came to know would shed even more light on this phenomenon. Butterscotch had big dreams for himself, for his future. He was an idealistic, progressive kid aiming to make a difference in the world through his art. And it's really tragic to see how excited and eager he is when he's at this age, knowing how jaded and awful he becomes later. He had so much passion, and yeah, I do recognize the humor in that he didn't really think any of it through, and definitely had an inflated male ego, but I can still appreciate his drive and enthusiasm. I always find the desire to change the world around you positively endearing, especially when you want to comment on the absurdity of the American dream. Classic stuff, really. But when he opened himself up and shared his ideas, he was rejected and shot down. We don't know exactly what happened, of course, but afterwards, his ego has clearly taken a huge hit. And honestly, I'm not sure their criticism of his work would have even had to have been that harsh to provoke this reaction from him. Criticism is so vital to creating any sort of art or content, and the most important part of receiving it is remembering that it's not personal. It's not an easy thing to do at all, but it is always true. At the end of the day, those people are just trying to help you improve your skills. Can't tell you how difficult it can be to see that in the moment though, speaking from experience here, but it's so important to keep in mind. However, traditional masculinity steers young men away from accepting help from others, from learning how to even listen to critique or incorporate others' ideas. Instead, it leads to many men believing that they must create the perfect output on the first try, and that any failure to do so means that they are simply not good enough, not talented. And since they don't really know how to reconcile those emotions or confide in others, they end up just lashing out, which leads to Butterscotch calling all of those beat writers
commie, liberal, Jew-loving rejects
pretty extreme. I really appreciate though how this shows how rejection affects him so deeply, and even sends him down paths away from the values that he just believed in, the ones that he wanted to write about. He was a progressive, but as soon as he faces any sort of critique against his work, he immediately turns in the opposite direction. He turned as far away from that criticism as he possibly could, to ignore it because it makes him feel terrible about himself. Even in his speech to Bojack and Free Churro, amid the blatant, rampant misogyny, his main point is that you can't depend on anyone. He's utterly alone in his life, despite having a family, and that is always by his own personal choice. He never chooses to get close to anyone, even trying to push Beatrice away by giving her that pizza parlor number even though he genuinely liked her. Perhaps this is something that he learned from his own father, from the fact that he never had a loving, motherly presence in his own home to guide him, to accept help from others. But it's utterly tragic to me how he never sustained a truly intimate relationship with anyone. Most of it is all surface level, all a distraction from his pain, his self-hatred. It's a lot like Bojack, really. And then, ultimately, he was forced into a life that he despised. And while yes, he did become that man with the corner office, adopting all the cliches that come with it, like cheating with your secretary, I do believe that this is a core reason why Butterscotch truly can't stand himself, like Bojack does. He never got anything he wanted, and ended up becoming the person that he used to loathe, even protest against, wanting to write satire or scathing commentary about. Every day, he wakes up and puts on a suit that forces him into a role that he believes, at the end of the day, is a negative one. And as much as he tries to settle into it, I don't think that really ever changed for him. And that is why, just like Bojack, he seeks to alleviate this intense self-hatred with quick fixes, like alcohol and meaningless sex. It's why he has women beneath him, like Henrietta, tell him he's a genius and an amazing writer, and he takes advantage of his power over them. I mean, he certainly isn't just going to get actual help for reasons that I've already stated. Specifically, one moment that always resonates with me is when he breaks down to Beatrice in Time's Arrow over the Henrietta situation. I could totally understand how this could be viewed as just him manipulating her, but really, I do think there is a lot of emotional truth to this scene. He states that he knows Beatrice hates him. He understands why. And the way Will Arnett reads this line really fantastically conveys that this understanding comes from his own hatred for himself. It's not as if he believes himself to be an actually great man who simply has a shitty family. As Bojack says, they all understood that they were terrible, that they were drowning together. This sort of costume that has been built up really shows its cracks in this one moment, and illustrates how he's not remotely that man that Bojack thought him to be a lot of the time. And the way he begs Beatrice to fix it for him is just so utterly childish, showing how he never really grasped how to reach out to others for help. He blows up at her in anger, he blames her for his mistakes, all before he resigns himself to his self-loathing. It's so indicative of how little he has learned, how long he has spent stuck as this man who denies any sort of helping hand and has ultimately resigned himself to misery. And that is why we get all of these examples of him being this terrible man. It is a reaction to all of these feelings inside. Overall, I just feel in general that I don't have a good understanding of Butterscotch as a horseman, you know? I feel like there are some really large pieces missing that would illuminate perhaps why he feels the need to seek others' approval so heavily, why he takes criticism so harshly, where all this self-hatred perhaps stems from. There's so much more that we could have learned about this man that really would have given us the more complicated image that we got with Beatrice. And I only wish the writers had been given the time to fully realize that. Because again, nothing was wrong with the writing of this show. Truly, I think they gave as much depth to this man as they could, but I am really analyzing him off of just tiny morsels of information here. I would love to have more to go on and for this video to be longer. But thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here at all, being on YouTube and spending this time with me. If you could like, comment, subscribe, I would really appreciate that. But if you want to support this channel even further, you can go to patreon.com/PosiTVty. That's PSO? No, that's wrong. That's PosiTVty, duh. To get all of these videos before they come out on YouTube, you get to see them fully unedited, to hear mistakes like that one, and to be able to choose whatever you want me to make or watch. I'm watching through Ruby right now, Tuca and Birdie right now. Videos on those will be coming soon, but regardless, I hope you're having a wonderful week, and I hope it continues that way for as long as possible. If not, we can get through this. I promise there's always stuff to look forward to, okay? I will see you for the next video, and I'm glad you're on this earth.